There is a man you probably know. Maybe you've seen him in a garage on a Saturday morning. His hands are stained with grease. He's working on something built before he was born. Maybe you are that man. If someone asks him why he chooses this, he'll pause before answering. He won't say nostalgia. He won't say they don't make them like they used to. He'll say something vague, something instinctive, something he can feel but hasn't quite named. This video is about naming it. Here's the thing nobody says out loud. Older cars are, by almost every measurable standard, worse. They are slower, less safe, less fuel efficient, harder to start in cold weather, more expensive to maintain. They don't have lane assist, or adaptive cruise, or rear cameras. They break down. They require attention. They demand something from you constantly, even when you just want to drive. So why do they feel more real? That question is worth sitting with. The answer isn't about cars. It was never about cars. It's about something that happens inside men when the world removes effort from their hands. And what some of them quietly, instinctively do about it? Think about what it actually feels like to drive something old. You sit lower than you expect. The seat has no memory foam, no lumbar adjustment. It's shaped by decades of use, not by ergonomic engineers. You turn the key and there's a mechanical reluctance before the engine catches, like an animal waking up rather than a system initializing. The steering is heavy, not power-assisted into weightlessness, but genuinely heavy. You feel the road through your palms. Every texture, every imperfection in the asphalt translates up through the column into your hands. There is noise, constant, layered noise. The engine breathing, metal expanding, wind pushing through a seal that was never perfect. You are not insulated from the experience of driving. You are inside it, surrounded by it, implicated in it. Every input you make matters immediately. Too much throttle out of a corner and the rear steps out. Brake too late and you feel it. The car does not correct for you. It does not assume you meant something safer than what you did. Now, contrast that with what a modern car feels like. You sit in a controlled environment, climate perfect, acoustically sealed. The engine, if you can hear it at all, is a distant suggestion. The steering communicates almost nothing. It's weighted artificially, tuned to feel responsive without actually transmitting the road. Driver assistance systems monitor your lane, your distance, your speed. Alerts fire if you seem distracted. If you drift, the car nudges itself back. The car is optimizing your experience in every sense, absorbing imperfections before they reach you, smoothing the roughness into something manageable. This is not a criticism. Modern cars are extraordinary engineering achievements. They are measurably safer. They save lives. By every rational metric, they are superior machines. But for a certain kind of man, something is missing. And understanding what is missing is where this gets interesting. Psychologists have spent decades studying something called locus of control. It's the degree to which people believe their actions determine their outcomes. People with a strong internal locus believe that effort produces results, that they are agents in their own lives. People with an external locus believe outcomes are shaped by systems, luck, and outside forces. Most men drawn to older cars have a deeply internal locus of control. They are not passive participants. They are not comfortable being passengers in their own experience. Older cars functionally, mechanically, unavoidably force your actions to matter. There is no system absorbing your mistakes. There is no algorithm smoothing your inputs. You either drive the car or the car wins. This is not about danger for its own sake. It's about agency, the feeling that you are genuinely in control, that the outcome is determined by what you do with your hands and feet right now. That feeling is increasingly rare, and some men chase it. There is also something to be said about mastery. Intrinsic motivation tends to be tied to competence, to the feeling of getting better at something real. Older cars are extraordinarily demanding teachers. Learning to heel and toe without synchromesh gearboxes, reading a carburetor, knowing the exact moment the engine wants more throttle, knowing the exact moment it will punish you for being greedy. These are skills with weight to them, skills that cannot be faked, skills the car itself will expose if you don't have them. Modern driving increasingly does not require mastery. It requires attention, but not the calibrated, earned competence that older cars demand. For men whose identity is tied to being capable to knowing things, solving problems with their own hands, this creates a quiet, unnamed dissatisfaction. The philosopher Matthew Crawford wrote about legible and illegible systems. Systems you can understand versus systems that are opaque to you. Older cars are almost entirely legible. You can trace a problem from symptom to cause with your hands. You can see what's broken, understand why, and fix it. The feedback loop between action and consequence is tight and honest. Modern cars are increasingly illegible. Software layers upon software, fault codes that require diagnostic machines, systems interacting with other systems in ways no single human fully understands. The car does more, but you understand it less. For men who derive identity from understanding, from knowing that opacity has a cost, there's a concept worth considering: the relationship between friction and meaning. Effort, resistance, difficulty, these are not just inconveniences. They are often the source of satisfaction itself. Think about why a man who could buy furniture chooses instead to build it. Why a man who could take an elevator runs the stairs. Why anyone chooses the harder version when the easier version produces the same outcome. The process is not separate from the value. The struggle is not incidental to the result, it is constitutive of it. It's what makes the result feel earned rather than simply obtained. Older cars are full of friction. They require effort before they reward you. They ask you to pay attention when you'd rather not. They make demands. That constant, low-level negotiation between you and the machine creates engagement that optimized systems cannot replicate. You are not a passenger. You are a participant. And participation, even demanding, inconvenient participation, tends to feel more alive than the alternative. Maybe it's not that older cars are better. Maybe it's that they demand more from you. And some men, quietly, still want to be demanded of. There is another dimension here that rarely gets named. It operates below the level of conscious thought. It has to do with status, but not the kind most people recognize. There is a form of status that is loud, expensive, designed to be seen. New luxury cars often operate in this register. They signal wealth, success, the ability to buy the best version of something. But there is another kind of status that works differently, quieter, more selective, earned rather than purchased. The man who drives a 40-year-old car he has maintained and rebuilt is signaling something to a very specific audience. That audience is not everyone. It is only people who know enough to recognize what they're looking at, to understand what it takes, to appreciate the patience, the knowledge, the taste involved. This is not performance, it's fluency, and fluency carries its own weight, its own form of respect that operates outside the economy of newer, faster, more expensive. You cannot buy your way into it, you have to earn it. For men skeptical of things that can simply be bought, that distinction matters. The modern world has become extraordinarily good at removing effort from daily life. In most contexts, this is genuinely good. Nobody wants to struggle for struggle's sake. But there is a quieter consequence of optimization. When everything becomes easier, it also becomes harder to feel the satisfaction of having done something. The feedback loop between effort and result gets longer, more diffuse, harder to feel. Some men sense this without being able to articulate it. They feel the distance growing between what they do and what it produces, between their effort and its weight in the world. And they begin, instinctively, to seek out spaces where that distance collapses, where cause and effect are immediate, honest, and unmediated by systems designed to protect them from their own choices. Older cars are one of those spaces. One of the last for some men. The garage is not a retreat into the past. It is a return to a certain mode of being. One defined by legible systems, direct feedback, and genuine mastery. A space where effort still has texture, where skill still has consequence, where a man can be genuinely competent in ways his day may not otherwise offer. This is not nostalgia. Nostalgia is passive. It faces backward. What drives these men is not a longing for the past. It is an alignment with a particular way of engaging with the world, one that values difficulty not as punishment, but as evidence that something real is happening. The man in the garage on Saturday morning is not avoiding the present. In many ways, he is more present than most. He is attending to something, listening to an engine the way you listen to a person, not for information, but for meaning, feeling the weight of something real in his hands, making decisions that matter, experiencing the direct, unfiltered consequence of his own judgment. There is something in that which modern life, for all its extraordinary convenience, has not managed to replace. They don't prefer old cars because they're stuck in the past. They prefer them because it's one of the few places left where effort still matters, where the machine doesn't smooth over your mistakes, where you are asked, moment to moment, to be genuinely capable. And for men who measure themselves by that standard, by competence, by mastery, by the quality of their attention and the precision of their judgment, that is not a small thing. That is everything.